Hey, 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 Rebel Speakers. This is the 100th episode of the Rebel Speaker Podcast. Woohoo! I can't believe it has been 100 episodes. Thank you so much for listening to me and tuning into the podcast and leaving me wonderful reviews on iTunes. Every review is appreciated. And today we have a very special episode of the podcast. I have brought back friend of the pod, Maggie Patterson from Small Business Boss. She's also the host of the Small Business Boss podcast, and we're going to flip the mic. Maggie is going to interview me, and I have no idea what she's going to ask me. I gave her the instructions of ask me things you think people would want to know about me. And since she knows me pretty well, I'm a bit scared, but it's going to be a super fun show to celebrate the 100th episode. So Maggie, welcome back to the podcast.
I'm really excited to be here and to be interviewing you on your podcast. It's very meta, but
Yes.
I like it.
I know it feels weird to be interviewed on my own podcast.
I had to explain that one to Britt before I came, and she's like, I don't know what you're doing. Have fun. All right, so I want to go ahead and get you fired up into full rebel mode. So let's start off with this question, because I know we've talked about this before, but I think it's something that it's really important if you're going to speak. Mm-hmm. What do you think is the worst piece of kind of common speaking advice out there? And I mean, I know there's lots of them, but I'd love to know which one is the absolute worst thing that we're all told to do, yet we shouldn't probably do it.
Oh, that is so hard because there are so many different things I'm thinking of. Like the first thing that popped in my mind is the overemphasis on delivery and don't worry about the content. It's like, okay, if you are really great at speaking and you can deliver well on stage, it doesn't matter what you say. Except something I see again and again is I will be talking to a client who told me, oh, I saw the best speaker the other night. She was incredible on stage. And I say, oh, cool. What did she talk about? And there's a pause. And then I don't remember. She was just really good. And that is such a huge problem because your message can't spread if people can't remember you. You are not going to get referrals for other speaking gigs if people don't remember your message. You're not going to be asked back if your presentation was basically fast food that they forgot about an hour later. So that overemphasis on delivery and nonverbals and that, okay, I'm really getting into it. That whole myth about like nonverbal communication is 90% of communication. Like, I hate that statistic because it is completely untrue and not what the researcher meant. But there is this like, oh, well, as long as you're great on stage and you're really entertaining and fun, you'll get all the speaking gigs. And it's just not true. And related to that, wow, this is something that's really getting to me, is the advice that your story is enough. Like, oh, well, just share your heart-stirring story and people will book you to speak. And that's not true at all. And we are in a time when nobody actually cares about your story unless you make it relevant to them. What is the takeaway? What is the learning? How can they apply your story to their life? But your story just isn't enough. And I wish people would stop selling that as a product for speakers, because what you'll find is like, you'll write your story, you'll find it very exciting, and then no one will want to book you to speak.
You know what? I love that you brought that because my most recent speaking gig was our local Chamber of Commerce, and they want me to come talk about finding clients. Like, that's my jam completely. But can you imagine if I'd come up and have my story of finding clients? Like, yes, I used a couple of my own examples, my own stories to help anchor it, but I also used examples from clients, examples from business friends. Like, I use different things to bring it to life. But can you imagine if I got up at a Chamber of Commerce thing and was like, I'm Maggie, you're a speaker, and today I'm going to tell you a little about my story. Like, no.
I know. I saw a woman once, and her speech was supposed to be on business development, and she told us her cancer story. Like, that was like how she kicked off the speech. And I'm like, okay, so is it because she has such strong business development, she was able to keep the business going through her cancer treatment? No, it had nothing to do with that. And I'm like, why did you tell me this story? I don't understand why it's there.
Yeah, and I think that's when people start to feel awkward and they tune out ultimately, right?
Oh yeah,
Like,
for sure.
Like, oh, pass me another croissant.
Exactly.
So, Michelle, one of the things I know that makes you really different is you're not just a speaking coach who's like, hey, put your hands here or do the power pose or whatever. You really focusing on messaging and crafting that message. So I very selfishly want to talk about that. And I have noticed that, obviously I work in communications all day long too. And one of the things I really notice is like, I don't think most people have a clear message. Like they don't have that kernel of what it is. So what is like probably the fastest way if I'm unclear to figure out, what the hell is my message? Aside from hiring you, like if I don't have a Michelle budget, which we'll talk about later, but I want to know like, how do I actually distill that message into something that is compelling and interesting?
Yeah. So I've recently developed this framework called the 3-word rebellion, which is, it's based in social movement theory, but it was also this pattern that I saw that successful speakers had about 3 words that encompassed what they were doing. So start with why from Simon Sinek, Mel Robbins has the 5-second rule. And then I noticed the social movements had the same thing where it's like Black Lives Matter, hashtag never again, hashtag me too. And I put together a framework that is freely available where you can start figuring out what your 3-word rebellion is. And part of the framework is doing free writing. I am a huge fan of free writing because it is the type of writing where you don't have to worry about spelling or grammar or punctuation. You just actually get to express your viewpoints. So I have prompts that I've used with clients again and again to walk them through the 3-word rebellion framework. So things like, what are you rebelling against? What pisses you off? Like, what change do you want to create in the world? Or, or my favorite question of them all is, if everyone acted on your message, what would the world be like? Because what that does when you start just free writing and not censoring yourself, you get some good data. Like, it's so weird, but I really view these free writes as like collecting data about your thoughts. And you can detach a little bit from your message and start looking at your writing, not for the content of what it says, but for the interesting words, for the verbs, for, standout nouns, and for things that you keep repeating over and over and over again. Because if you're repeating something, that is probably a clear indicator that it is the core of your message. So then you can use the framework to start playing with and developing different 3-word rebellions and then testing them out. But I think it's important to have a framework to go through. Otherwise, we are too close to our message to actually see it clearly. I know for me, the 3-word rebellion, that came out of a conversation I had with a book coach named Jenny Nash. And I swear that message was like right here in front of my face. I would have never seen it without her. So that's another pro tip. Get a friend in your rebellion to actually listen and read your writing, because they're going to be able to see things that you as the creator cannot.
So I love the 3-word rebellion. I know we've talked about this, but I want to talk about like, why is this concept of the 3-word rebellion so timely today here in 2018?
We're in an unprecedented time of social movements and social unrest. Well, I think all over the world, but I'm feeling, since I'm in the United States, I feel it very much here. And so we're seeing, I know. So we're seeing all of these movements rise up. You know, we have the resistance in the United States. We have Me Too and Time's Up and Never Again and Black Lives Matter. So we are in a time of great social change, and some of that change hasn't been realized yet. So the 3-word rebellion is so timely because people are hungry for change, and change is hard. Like, it is difficult. We all know this. If you want to change someone's behavior, that is an extremely difficult task. But as business owners, as speakers, we are now actually primed for change because we see the disruption going around. And one of the interesting things I posted in my Facebook group this morning is even just looking at Tony Robbins versus the Me Too movement.
Yeah.
It's been fascinating because, you know, Tony Robbins is this man who has power, influence, tons of money, millions of fans. And yet when he went up against the Me Too movement, he lost, and he is still losing based on that really bad apology he made.
Yeah, like, you want to talk about, like, as a recovered PR person, I'm looking at this whole thing and I'm like, OMG, he's getting terrible counsel.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's terrible, terrible, terrible. And the thing is, Tony Robbins built a business empire for Tony Robbins. He never built a message that's bigger than himself, bigger than his business, that could be spread by other people. He's still very much at the center of his business. And what we as business owners and speakers have this opportunity right now is to build a message that is bigger than us, bigger than our business, that calls people in, incites them to act, and really gives them this place where they belong. Because when we belong to something, how do I want to put this? When we belong to something, we defend that movement. We are the protectors of that message. And Tony Robbins fans aren't protecting his message. They're not defending him because he's not a part of their identity. Whereas when you are a part of a movement, it is who you are, or part of who you are. So you're more likely to spread it and protect it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, the Robbins thing, because I've been thinking about it a lot, and I have a lot of friends who've always been really into him, and I'm like, they're very quiet right now.
Mm-hmm.
They're not defending him, which I thought they would be. So I think it's been interesting to watch, but I also look at it as like, what's the difference now, like, between the charismatic cult leader type guru type leader and an actual leader of a movement that it is bigger than them? I think it's going to be really interesting to watch some of this unfold.
Yeah, and one of the things I've noticed, especially in the speaking industry, is that speakers have really abdicated their leadership role, because I see a speaker as being a leader, and it has really just turned into capitalism at its finest. Like, how do I make money doing this? How do I sell more from the back of the room? And it became, it's more about the money than leading people to a different life, to like shaking up their industry. It's more about, oh, how can I make money at this versus how can I really impact people, make a difference, and leave a legacy.
Yes, and I love the leave a legacy part of it, because I know that, looking at your work around the 3-word rebellion, one of the things that really stuck with me, Michelle, was this concept of devotion. Because that, like, it's like you looked into my heart and my head, and you're like, that's exactly what my business partner Brittany and I are trying to do with Small Business Boss, because that I want to be my legacy work, to help that group of people, especially as the economy becomes more and more freelance, to get paid fairly, especially women, right? Like, that's really like near and dear to my heart. This is the work I would do if I wasn't being paid. So
yeah,
I think this concept of devotion, like, can you talk more about that and how critical that is? Because I don't feel like you're ever going to have that mighty, small and mighty army, or even get to the stage of a movement without that devotion.
Yeah. And it's about putting your audience before yourself and really wanting that change for them. And I first was realizing this concept as I was watching Mel Robbins, my girl speaker crush, from the 5-second rule.
I might have picked that up from talking to you.
Yeah. And how she interacts with her people on social media. Like if you post on her Instagram or comment on her Instagram or have a question for her, she responds. She wants to be your cheerleader. She is devoted to her audience and to the change she's trying to bring about for them. And in turn, they love her. They talk about the 5-second rule to other people. I can't even tell you how many times I've mentioned it on the Rebel Speaker podcast because I'm a devoted, like, a devotee of what she's doing and the work she's creating in the world. And then all of a sudden, like, the 5-second rule becomes bigger than just Mel Robbins because her devoted fans or followers who got an immediate change from using that 5-second rule tells everyone about it. And I think we saw the same type of thing with Simon Sinek and Start With Why. Now, everybody talks about Start With Why, and sometimes they don't cite him, which really annoys me, but that's a whole...
don't really know what they're talking about?
Yeah. I know. Like that's a whole other thing. But Start With Why became so much bigger than him. And even though he's doing other things now, that legacy lives on. People are still talking about it. They're still watching that TEDx talk. So there is such power when you create something and then you become devoted to your audience and you want them to experience that change. And they feel that. What was that?
Here's what I love about this concept of devotion is I think it plays something with it that's a real core value for me personally is the idea of accessibility. So like when you use the Mel Robbins example, I've seen her in action and I'm like, yeah, that's why people are devoted to her because she didn't just create the change. She's super devoted to them and she's providing something that so many leaders or experts aren't willing to do.
Yes.
They want to be up here. Like, my team will be my buffer. And you know what? I get healthy boundaries, but I think so many times we're trying to throw something up between us and our audience, and that's actually really to our detriment.
I agree because you can still have your boundaries around accessibility, but showing up on your Instagram feed and responding to comments, that is something that she easily does. I'm sure with the amount she travels, she's probably doing it in trains, planes, and automobiles, but it's how she shows up for her people and how she shows she cares. And it doesn't feel transactional with Mel Robbins. I think so many business owners, so many speakers are more concerned with the money than they are with the relationship, that it becomes very transactional. So that's what I love is like she wants a relationship with the people who follow her.
And, I honestly love this guy or hate this guy. Someone who does accessibility well is Gary Vaynerchuk. He will call people. He will he does the things that other people will not do. And that is why no matter how you feel about that guy, people are devoted to him and his message. Mm-hmm. He's got his nation of people. And I mean, he's not selling them anything.
No, he works with super high-end companies. He's not selling those people anything. It definitely, the one thing it does, it helps his speaking career, right? Because they know, an event knows that if they bring Gary Vee in, he brings his platform with him. He brings his devoted followers with him to that event. And that is so powerful.
So we've mentioned a couple names of different people. Who do you think we should be watching, or who's kind of quietly creating a movement that we should maybe be looking to and put our eyes on them to learn more how to do this?
Yeah. So I naturally start thinking about my clients because, the up and coming movement makers, we don't tend to know about. And I get to work with people like on the ground floor of that, like helping them with their message. So I always think of my friend and client Ime Hisu, and she has over 300 food allergies. And
oh my.
yes, 300 food allergies. So she pretty much eats bacon and meat and vegetables. But when she was first getting diagnosed, there wasn't any information for her to navigate it. And she kept getting sick on food that she thought was safe for her. And she'd end up in the hospital, or she'd spend hours in the toilet. Like, it was terrible. And there was no one out there to help her navigate. Like the medical industry, her dietitian, none of those people actually knew how to do anything. And it was emotionally, total bummer, because you can't go out to dinner. You can't go over to a friend's house, and you have to do some pretty rebellious moves. Like, she came to my wedding and she brought her own food because I called her and was like, dude, there's going to be nothing for you to eat here. And she's like, that's cool. I'll just bring my own food. And so she is on this path of making food fun again, because when you have an allergy, eating sucks and it's not fun. So she wants to help people make food fun again. And that's her core message. And that's what she's rolling out in the world. And I think personally, she's going to do some very big things for the medical industry and also for the food industry with helping people navigate their food allergies. So she's definitely, in my opinion, one to watch.
Awesome. I'm actually super interested in that from the perspective of even not just the allergies, but I think so many of us have a fraught relationship with food, right? So it's hard. How do we make this fun and not like I'm going to eat these 10 nuts to punish myself?
I'm going to count every single calorie, and yes.
Yeah, I'm over that now. We broke up, me and calorie counting.
Me too.
That's why we're friends, right?
Yeah, totally.
All right, so one of my favorite things about you as a doctor, because it sounds super cool, but what are you a doctor of, in case people don't know? How does that inform what you're doing on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so my doctorate is in communication. Like, I'm actually legit. Like, I understand all of the theories in communication. And what it really helps me do is understand how the audience processes a message, because I don't think what people think about is that if you are a speaker, it is very taxing on the audience member to process what you're saying, to stay focused on your message. So my whole process that I use with my clients, it's all based in some type of communication theory. So like I mentioned earlier, the 3-word rebellion is based in social movement theory. When I talk to people about building out the audience journey, one of the things I'm always fascinated by, it's like, what's the resistance to this message? Because that's inoculation theory. You have to answer that preemptively so people don't object to your message and tune out. So that is always what I'm thinking about. Like, how is the audience going to process this? How are they going to receive this? Why are they going to reject this? And that is based all on my background in communication and getting that PhD.
So guys, Michelle didn't start just making this up. She's actually legit, which is major on the internet.
I know. And I know I don't do a good enough job of saying like, no, my doctorate is actually in communication. Because I wouldn't have used doctor if I don't know, I was a doctor of economics and was doing public speaking work and messaging work with people. But yeah, like communication has been my passion for years, probably for like 40 years. Ugh. Bless you.
Oh, I just snuck up allergies, man. I tell you. So let's say I have an idea for my 3-word rebellion. What's a really good sign that I'm ready to work with you, or maybe that I'm not quite ready for the full-on Michelle experience?
Yeah. So I want to say, like, you don't have to have a fully fleshed out 3-word rebellion to work with me. Like, most people really struggle with this. Some people get it. Like, some people get it immediately and it's amazing. But the majority struggle with it. So what I look for is people who are clear on who their audience is, like who are they calling in with their 3-word rebellion? Because you would be surprised, or maybe you wouldn't be so surprised, at how many people are like, oh, I speak to women between the ages of 20 and 65. And I'm like, oh.
That's not general.
Yeah, I'm like, that's a little too general. You have to know, like, I think about Ime, like she's speaking to allergy sufferers. It's very clear. It's very succinct. She knows who she's going after. So knowing that you have an audience and feeling like, okay, I have this idea. I think it could be the next big thing for me. I think it's super important and I don't know how to express it. Because what I find is like, and I just validated this, I looked at all of my clients currently, and every single one of them is in some type of transition. So either they've discovered their next big idea and they need to figure it out. Like one of my clients is working on how to solve the future of work problem when the machines take our jobs, how do we retrain people? And other people are transitioning in their business from being like more one-on-one to like, I want to be the face of my business. Yeah. So those are telltale signs. Like if you are in transition and you don't know how to talk about it and you're a little nervous about talking about it because you know it's important and you want to nail it and get it right, then that's like the perfect time to come in and start working with me. Like don't think that you have to have your 3-word rebellion nailed. I can help you with that.
So I will say, guys, I have worked with Michelle and she didn't ask me this, but you need to work with her if this is what you need. Just saying, I'm a happy client right here. So before we enter the speed round, I want to know something that's really been on my mind, and I haven't asked you about this. I was saving it for today.
Ooh.
Why 3 words? Can I have a 5-word rebellion? Because I am a little rebellious like that.
Well, I do give a range, right? So it's 2 to 5 words. And part of the reason is because people remember what they hear they remember best what they hear in 3s. And there's also this other rule called the rule of 7 plus or minus 2, I think it is, or plus or minus 3. And that's the reason why our phone numbers are 7 digits, because we can remember 7 digits. We can hold 7 things in our mind. And since words have a little bit more data than digits, 3 to 5 seems like what people can remember. And also 3 words makes a great hashtag for what you're trying to do, because you want to spread your message. You want people to have a way to identify your message. So having a hashtagable 3-word rebellion is amazing.
Or even think about it like a tagline. Like so many times I'll be working with clients on taglines. So I'm like, this isn't a tagline. This is a sentence. Like what just happened here? It's an entire sentence. Let's put a period at the end and put it on the website. Let's not call this a tagline.
Yeah. And I think, you know, one of the things I find interesting about the 3-word rebellion is that it should inspire a response of either I get it and I'm in, or, ooh, I'm curious. Tell me more. Because I remember when I first heard the 5-second rule from Mel Robbins, I was like, I don't know what that is, but I'm going to Google till I find out.
That's what I really like about Start with the Why or 5-second rule is it's clever, but it's not hard to understand. And I think that so many times, especially in the circles we run in, Michelle, is people get so stuck on this like extra, like they try to be super fancy about it. And it's like, no, actually, then you're not going to be able to call your people in because they're not going to know what you're talking about.
No, and I think that's a common misconception. Like people think they need to make it sexy, like it really has to pop. And yeah, Start with Why, not sexy at all, but compelling. So the clearer you can be with your message or in your 3-word rebellion, the better off you are. And I think that's how a lot of people get in their way from finding their 3-word rebellion, is because they're like, it needs to be super clever. And I'm like, no, it needs to be super clear.
Yeah, well, I mean, goldfish have a longer attention span than us, right? So
yeah.
Why are we going to try to go up against this? All right, so I have the speed round now for you as we wrap up.
Okay.
Get ready.
Okay, I'm ready. I think.
If you couldn't do what you do now, what would you do instead? Career-wise.
Musical theater.
Oh, I love it. Which one of your 3 cats is most like you?
Probably Addie.
Okay. I didn't know which one you were going to pick, so.
I know she's a little bit more, you know what I like about Addie? She says what she thinks and she gets what she needs. She's very much the leader of this little tribe I have going on here. So she's always getting her needs met, and I do the same.
What is the best book you've read in the last year?
Oh my gosh, that is so hard because I've read so many books. What is
looking for book recommendations?
I know. Because like I'm looking at my desk and I'm like, right now I've been collecting books that have really great interior layouts because for the 3-Word Rebellion book. What is a book that has had an impact on me? Well, I did read The 5-Second Rule, and that was an amazing book. I wish I had my Kindle because it's not coming to my head.
All right, we'll go 5-Second Rule.
Yeah, and I'm also reading Andrea Owen's book, How to Stop Feeling Like Shit, which is excellent for all the ways women self-sabotage. Like she tells it how it is, and you can see yourself like, oh, I do this, I don't do this, but I do this and this. So that's a great book too.
Yeah, that is a super solid book. It's on my to be read list. We'll have to see if my library gets it. What is the book we should all read to help us improve our communication skills?
I am a fan of Donald Miller's Building a Story Brand book because, all right, one of the things that annoys me about that book is it's totally based on the hero's journey, and he does not cite Joseph Campbell, which is annoying and a little questionably ethical, but the book is solid. And for me, one of the big takeaways is how do you position yourself as the guide instead of the hero? Because you want to be more like Yoda than you do Luke Skywalker.
You know, you are preaching to the choir right here. That's one of my biggest pet peeves, especially in the entrepreneur space. Like, I don't care you were living on your sister's couch.
No, nobody cares.
I'll not live on my sister's couch.
Exactly.
What is your favorite food?
Ooh, my favorite food.
That's a drink. So
yeah, I love sushi, which is kind of funny because my husband doesn't love sushi, so I don't get it very often.
All right, I was going to ask your favorite vacation spot, but I think it's very clear to everyone that knows you, it's Hawaii. So what is one place you want to visit that you haven't already, and why?
I would love to go to Australia and New Zealand just because it's so beautiful. The people are so friendly. I've had so many clients from Australia who are just amazing. And it just seems just like a wonderful place to go and hang out. And they have great beaches.
And kangaroos.
And kangaroos and koala bears.
Platypuses. Like, think of all the options.
I know. I'm so excited.
That's all my questions in the speed round. I think you handled that really well because you had no idea what I was going to ask.
No. So that was awesome. Thank you so much, Maggie, for being here and celebrating the 100th episode with me. It has been so fantastic these questions were amazing. So thank you. And this was a great conversation. And
I get a podcaster to interview you.
I know, right? So here's to 100 more episodes.
Yes, and to us cheersing in person in 2018.
Yes, soon we will meet in person or see each other again in person. Woohoo! And then we can celebrate officially. So thank you everyone for tuning into this very special episode of the Rebel Speaker podcast. And I am looking forward to the next 100 episodes with you. We'll see you soon.